Good morning. Welcome to CATEX-TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Wednesday, February 9th, 2011. 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S., 4:30 p.m. in London, 12:30 in Bermuda. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our AOL instant mail address is CATEX-TV. Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, is appearing in front of Congress today. He's testifying that the economic uptick still remains sluggish and that job losses are higher than desired. The stock market's treading water. It's down actually about 15 points right now. On this day in 1964, the Beatles, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, appeared live on U.S. TV for the first time on The Ed Sullivan Show. That used to be on Sunday night at 8 p.m. Go to our main news. Well, this is an interesting story. Shares in the London-based company Exchanging have dropped about 50% in value today after the London-based provider of back-office services issued its second profit warning in the past 7 months. They also announced that they were eliminating their dividend. They also announced that their chief executive officer and founder, David Andrews, had resigned. Andrews stepped down from the board. He left the role of CEO with immediate effect. Exchanging is the sponsor of the Cambridge and Oxford boat race. They also said today that the results for the 12 months to December 31st, 2010 would include impairment charges of £12 million and a £100 million goodwill write-down relating to its Cambridge Solutions business. Underlying operating profit for the current 2011 financial year, that's this year, would be below the lower end, they said, of analysts' estimates of £55 million. Exchanging blamed that result, or prospective result, on the absence of contract settlements, a contract termination that cost the company £2 million in profit, and a deteriorating performance in its U.S. claims business. Ken Lever, who joined as CFO in October, is going to take over as acting CEO. Exchanging had its IPO in 2007. It's been dogged, however, by concerns about its accounting policies, in particular its treatment of fair value adjustments to its £145 million acquisition of Cambridge Solutions, as well as a dearth of new contracts. The company, which provides business processing services for large multinationals, including Lloyd's of London, has already cut its European workforce and shifted jobs to India, and more than 40% of its 8,000 employees are now based in India. Analysts at Numis maintained their sell recommendation and said Exchanging's trading update demonstrates again the opaqueness of the business and the disastrous acquisition of Cambridge Solutions. The chief executive has rightly, in our opinion, fallen on his sword. It's a very interesting story. Willis Global has announced a series of appointments in its reinsurance, wholesale, and placement divisions. Peter Hearn will become chairman of Willis Re. Stephen Hearn will become the CEO of Willis Re. Dominic Semengo Turner will replace Hearn as chief executive of Willis's London market wholesale business, and Alistair Swift will move up to take Semengo Turner's position as chief executive of Willis Global Placement. Well, this is a picture of asbestos with the AIG logo superimposed on top of it. AIG confirmed today its fourth quarter earnings will be dented by a $4.6 billion reserve strengthening charge at its Chartis subsidiary. About a quarter of that will relate to asbestos exposures. A number of other insurers have reported reserve strengthening in their fourth quarter earnings, but this is by far the biggest. It also reflects an update in AIG's asbestos loss model. It comes on top of a $122 million strengthening of Chartis' own asbestos reserves in the third quarter. The net charge will be $4.1 billion after taking into account $446 million in discount and loss-sensitive business premium adjustments. Here's an interesting story. Lloyd's insurer Omega is being sued by its former CEO, Richard Tolliday. Insurance Times is reporting this. Tolliday's lawyers filed the suit in London High Court against Omega Insurance Holdings Limited last month. Details of the suit have not yet been disclosed. It comes only 10 months after he was forced out at Omega in a boardroom battle. Omega had removed Tolliday 10 months ago and appointed 6 new directors, backed by its biggest shareholder, Invesco. Tolliday was understood to be negotiating a settlement in the wake of his departure. He earned about $1.1 million U.S. in salary and benefits in 2009. Also last month, Omega received, quote, an unsolicited approach from Canopius, proposing to buy the company. News from Peoria, RLI Corporation announced that it has created a new property treaty group within its RLI Re division. It's going to expand into the reinsurance marketplace beyond its current facultative. The new group will offer customized assumed property reinsurance to a group of regional and super-regional insurance companies. The new RLI Property Treaty Group will be a broker market reinsurer. It'll work exclusively with reinsurance intermediaries. The group will be based in Stamford, Connecticut, and will be led by George Dragonetti, Senior Vice President of RLI Re. Kevin Brawley is the overall President of RLI Re. Stock market in New York is down about 22 points right now. We'll go to a word from our sponsors. XL Insurance down in Bermuda saw its full-year net income more than double in 2010. Substantial prior year reserve increases that underpinned its growth in the fourth quarter. Actually, the company is incorporated in Dublin, Ireland. They gave an indication of its likely exposure to the Australian flooding. They said over $23 million of losses had been recorded in the fourth quarter of last year, and between $75 million and $95 million are expected to come in this quarter, first quarter 2011. Gross premiums written during the whole of 2010 grew 2.5%, despite a drop-off in the fourth quarter. So that's pretty good news for them. Just down the street, Renaissance Re's fourth quarter profit dropped 40% amid lower revenue, but its core earnings increased. Back in November, Ren Re sold its U.S. insurance operations to QBE for about $275 million, thus narrowing their focus down to the much larger reinsurance segment. Ren Re's investment income dipped 11%. Net written premiums were $30 million versus a negative $5.5 million a year earlier. The company posted a profit of $133 million, or $2.23 a share, down from $3.38 a share. In Egypt, I think we're steaming toward a disaster. The Vice President Suleiman announced today that it's time for the protesters to go home, that there will be no government change, and the game is over. Meanwhile, the protesters didn't listen to him and shut down the Egyptian cabinet building. Cabinet ministers have been evacuated. Outside pro-democracy protesters are protesting. Pro-democracy demonstrations are gaining in Cairo. Many people are, in addition to camping out in Tahrir Square, are also moving out to the Parliament buildings now. On Friday, protesters are anticipating a march of 3 million people that is going to be spread between Cairo, Alexandria, and other large cities in Egypt. Mubarak's message thus far has been that he is not going to leave the presidency until his term expires in September. Demonstrators have put a sign up in front of the cabinet building saying closed until the fall of the regime. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens if the government digs its heels in and the protesters continue to increase the wattage. We could unfortunately see a breakout of violence far beyond what we've seen so far. In Texas yesterday, a natural gas processing plant exploded in the eastern part of the state. A massive blast occurred at a facility in Mount Bellevue in the suburbs of Houston, owned by Enterprise Products Partners, the nation's largest provider of crude oil, natural gas, and petrochemicals. Flames continued to burn at the complex until early evening. Enterprise said it allowed the fire to burn out and that no danger was posed to the community. The main facilities in the complex, such as delivery terminals on the Houston ship channels and natural gas liquids, are delivered into the facility from the depot at the shore. Enterprise delivers in more than 49,000 miles of pipeline, and they operate 19 such processing plants around the country. Well, there's a big sigh of relief in Tokyo today. The U.S. government has determined that electronic flaws were not to blame for the unintended acceleration in Toyotas that forced the Japanese company to recall 8 million cars. The inquiry has been set up with the resources of NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, to determine whether or not the acceleration was due to faulty electronics or due to previously known mechanical faults. According to the U.S. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood, Toyota's problems were mechanical, not electrical. The incidents were blamed on a sticking accelerator panel and jammed floor mats, as the car manufacturer had originally found. Toyota said that the findings, quote, confirmed the reliability of the company's electronic throttle control systems. The investigation analyzed 280,000 lines of computer source code used to run Toyota vehicles looking for electronics problems. They also examined whether or not electromagnetic radiation might have played a role. LaHood described the probe into Toyota as one of the most exhaustive, thorough, and intensive research efforts ever undertaken. Well, I'm going to go ahead and try to pronounce this. Let's bring this up. This is the volcano in Iceland from last summer, Mount Eyjafjallajökull. You'll recall this shut down air traffic between Europe and the U.S. for a couple of weeks. Stranded people everywhere, massive business interruption claims. The airlines brought claims against their insurance companies. Well, Icelandic scientists are saying that the country's second largest volcano is showing signs of unusual activity and looks set to erupt this year. Professor Paul Einarsson told the London Telegraph there is no doubt that lava there is slowly growing, and seismicity of the last few days is a sign of it. There's every reason to worry, as a sustained earthquake tremor in the area indicates the strongest recorded movement in recent times. Einarsson warns that this volcano, called Badarbunga, could have a much bigger impact. Its last major eruption produced a huge ash cloud and the largest identified lava flow in 10,000 years. Well, if that thing is any bigger than the one last summer, we're all in trouble. The stock market is down about 20 points right now. If we have any breaking news, we'll come back and tell you. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.